Okay, Jim, Joe, good to have you. Tell me, for a company who's starting to think that there's something in this experience economy for me, how do they get started? What's the fastest way to get started?
Well, the fastest way to get started is actually to embrace being on stage. It's not to spend all the money in the design and the environment and the technology and all that. I mean, those may be very important depending on what business you're in. But the absolute fastest way and the cheapest way is to understand that your employees are on stage, get them to want to be on your stage, get them to understand how to act in a way that engages each individual customer that you have. And therefore create a great performance that your customers find engaging.
Yeah, and even take a half step back, it starts with mindset. You have to recognize the difference between experiences and services and recognize that the work has to be done differently so that you're not just saying you're offering an experience in name only. It takes some deliberate effort to do something differently to create a memorable event versus merely do the activities that you've traditionally performed. But once the company gets it, then I think Joe's right. A good place to start is get your employees' contribution to the experience as good as you can get it.
I mean, that's a great comment. It's not just a half step back, that's a full step. I mean, that is the first thing. People often ask me, what are the greatest impediments to getting into experience staging? And I always say it's mindset. You've got to have the right mindset. But that mindset has to be not just at the top, not just in the management, but it has to reach down to every individual employee, or it's still not going to work.
Although I think it's necessary at the top, or certainly a lot easier, because for anybody else in the organization to really embrace this, they've got to see it's consistent throughout the whole organization. In fact, it helps a lot if you have a champion for experiences, and especially if that champion is leadership in the organization.
So it's got to be a top-down and a bottom-up approach a little bit.
Well, it's got to be understood top-down. It's got to be where the top can focus on the fact and ideally be able to explicitly say, we're now in the experience business. Our business is one of staging experiences. But it just can't stay there. It has to then filter down and to where you even get all frontline staff to recognize it and ideally be intrinsically motivated to say, all right, this is a great thing. This enriches my work. This allows me to do a better job. This allows me to interact with customers the way that I want and thereby, they're the ones that are really creating that great experience.
Well, I think maybe top and down is not the right kind of axis. Think about just closer to immediate interaction with the customers versus the leadership that's often farther away. It's not going to happen consistently on the front line if leadership is not behind it. And yet the front line can get more enthusiastic about doing it, knowing that leadership has made an investment in letting them learn how to perform differently.
What was that statistic that you recently saw?
Oh, yeah, that 85% of the ultimate opinion that you have about a company is formed at the final interaction with the company, and often that's the frontline worker. So you can make all the investments you want in strategy and environment and process and technology. And it's all for naught if you don't have that executed at the final step, which is often executed by your personnel.
And that's so important, because I think when we talk to companies, a lot of times they say, we want to get into experience, so we want to redesign our whole space. We need new technology, but really it starts with training and your people and getting your people right. So what role does training play in the experience economy?
Well, it's a key way to be able to get the frontline staff to understand what your strategy is, what you're trying to accomplish, and especially then how to go about doing it. That they embrace the change that you're making, and you may eventually come in with the new technology, the new processes. There are many businesses that really require that to make a full change, and then how to use that technology. How do you embrace those processes in a way that again creates that experience for your guests? Well, the key is where they do it, as Jim said, is how they do their jobs differently that fulfills the strategy, that fulfills embracing the experience economy.
And you can't just tell your staff, can't just tell your workers, go stage an experience. Right. I mean, what on earth is that? Frankly, too many companies say they're offering experience and haven't done anything differently to actually offer one. And so you need to provide workers with some new tools. It's important, like what training they get, not just do training. What's the content of the training?
Right.
I think what we try to do here is some very simple, practical techniques, tools to give your workers to equip them so you're not just doing this in name only.
Right. And let me say in particular, a lot of training out there is to make interactions with customers nice and easy and convenient. Right. And those are all well and good, but that really gives you good service. That doesn't rise to a level of a distinctive experience.
Right.
And to do that, you need to make the interactions with guests to be engaging, to be memorable, to be personal, right? Recognizing that's where the experience really happens, is inside of us, and to recognize that it's about providing time well spent. Great service is about time well saved. Let's get in and out, nice, easy, convenient, as quickly as possible. Spend as little time with the company as possible, versus an experience is about time well spent, that they actually value the time that they spend with you, in your places, with your people.
And some of those people, some of those customers who come in may not want it fast. They may be looking for some kind of an interaction, and if you're focused on speed, they're not going to get only and exactly what they were looking for.
Right, you're missing a total opportunity out there for those that do.
And an easy and convenient might help not waste your customer's time, but it's not going to make it memorable. It's not going to have them spend more time with you. And we like to say if customers spend more time with you, they're more likely to spend more money with you. And sort of what services are about is increasingly people want to spend less and less time with procurement of goods and services. They want that done remotely, online, quickly, over with. But they'll simultaneously spend more time with enterprises that stage a memorable experience. And the dollars will follow, we're convinced.
Right. In fact, if you think about it, every company today is competing against every other company in the world for the time, attention, and money of individual customers. Right? Time is the currency of the experience economy. You've got to provide that time well saved. But you have to grab and keep their attention in order to spend that time with you. And then if you do it, as Jim says, they'll spend money with you. They'll buy your offerings, whatever they might be, because of that great engaging experience that they had.
So in the 25 years that you guys have been doing this, when you see a company that says, okay, I want to get into this kind of experiential thinking, where do they encounter the roadblocks? What is it that prevents them from kind of getting to either to the finish line or to get an improved experience in their business?
Well, the number one roadblock, again, is mindset, right? To not have the proper view of what experiences are and how we go about doing it. And then the office, they let a lot of things sort of get in the way of being able to create that experience. And a lot of companies, too, don't understand what business they're in and understand what their customers really want. And it all has to come together to create that experience for them.
Yeah. I think nothing can do more harm than succeeding in this arena if you're doing it in name only. Mm-hmm. If you just call what you're doing an experience, and you're not going to move from offering a service, even an excellent service, to a memorable experience if you don't do something differently. I think a lot of times people, they recognize this is what we have to do. We know we need to do something to differentiate, but they stick with the same old tools, expecting something to happen differently. And I think one of the reasons the experience economy has been so enduring because it provides whole different language, whole different frameworks, whole different way to go about how you even think about work. I mean, 3 chapters in the experience economy are about the notion of work as theater. And so what we'll try to do with On Stage is translate that so it's not just sort of theoretical drama kind of ideas that are good for strategy and for leadership to understand, but to translate that into actionable behaviors that happen moment to moment with customers. Another thing I think it's a barrier is the mistaken notion of even what an experience is. Mm-hmm. In some cases, it's equate the environment with the experience when experiences happen inside of people. So that's a common misconception, that if we create the environment, the experience necessarily follows. Well, it better be a very good environment. It may work if it's a lounge kind of environment with minimal human interaction, but if you're in a business that has more significant human interaction, that's the place to start.
And what you said about vocabulary, Jim, is so important, that you really have to understand the vocabulary of experience staging. And as you said, not just calling something an experience, but then understand what are all of the elements that have to come together. And if you change vocabulary, you can change how people think. And if you change how people think, then you can change behavior. I mean, it works the other way around, too. You can go from behavior to thinking to vocabulary. But it is an incredibly important thing to get right. If you use the wrong terms for things, then you're going to have this mismatch of what you're trying to do and what you're saying about what you're doing, and it's not going to work.
And we can just make this stuff up. I mean, we thought real hard about the appropriate language, the appropriate terms that best describes what's required. That's the difference between delivering a service and staging an experience. People say, we deliver an experience. Like, no, have you read the book? I mean, there's a fundamental difference. Right. But it's not coming out of nowhere. I mean, it's grounded in research we've done. Famous Irving Goffman. The presentation of everyday self. I mean, that's a seminal, well-known academic thing that the frontline workers not going to have any regard for, but proves that the things we're saying needs to happen at that level are grounded in understanding that we're talking about human performance, that there's a difference between merely what you do and how you do it. And in fact, there's a depth of knowledge that we've drawn from. I mean, even if a reader among the executives is a footnote reader, you'll see how much time we spent making sure we weren't just making this stuff up.
Right. We always like to say we didn't invent the experience economy. We discovered it. Right. We discovered what companies were naturally doing as their goods and services became commoditized, and they shifted into experience.
And framed it, explained it, not just from a depicting or sort of indicative of what experience is, but also to outline some imperatives, things that have to be acted upon in order to get there. So I think our work is both descriptive of what an experience is versus a mere service, but also the necessary steps needed to do it differently.
And where did the kernel of that idea come from? You say you observed it.
You deserve telling that story.
It was actually an executive education session I was doing where I talked about how customizing a good automatically turns it into a service, right? So the DNA is actually my first book, Mass Customization, which is in fact how Jim and I got together because he read the book and contacted me.
Wrote him like a 3 or 4 sentence letter.
Right, with a videotape.
With a videotape.
And then I was doing this one exec ed session, this guy in the back of the room, sort of a smart aleck, he raised his hand and said, well, hey, you talked about service companies at Mass Customize. What does it turn a service into? I shot back that Mass Customization automatically turns a service into an experience. And I went, whoa, that sounds good. Hold on a second, I got to write that down. And I shared it with Jim, and we got to thinking about it.
He called me.
Right.
Guess what I think it was like, guess what I said today? I mean, you knew right away it was something.
Yeah, I knew. And then and getting back to vocabulary, once you said that, once you understand that, if that's true, then experiences are a distinct economic offering, as distinct from services as services are from goods. And then you start to see it as everywhere, not just in Disney theme parks and in obvious places and the experiences that have always been around, like movies and sporting events and plays and concerts and so forth, but you could see it as what companies were doing, that they're really engaging their customers in their places, and so that's where we got together and really started to put this all together to say, well, if it is a distinct economic offering, then there be an economy based off of experiences, an economy where experiences have in fact now, or we used to talk about the forthcoming experience economy, the nascent experience economy. Now it's here, right? We're in an experience economy. What consumers want over is experiences over goods and services. They in fact want goods and services to be commoditized, to buy at the lowest possible price, at the greatest possible convenience, so they can spend their hard-earned money and their hard-earned time on the experiences that they truly value.
And put it at a fundamental financial level. The corporation with the largest market capitalization are those with which people spend the most time. Facebook, Google, Apple stores. The rest of retail is crumbling and people spend time in an Apple store. I mean, time is the currency of experiences, as we say in the training series. And you got to get in an age when consumers and even business to business want to spend less and less time with those things that don't engage. And they have all the means in which to spend less time with you. There's an app for that. Right. There's an app for spending less time with you. But it's the companies that get customers to value the time they spend with you that I think ultimately translates into economic success.
And I'll mention in retail in particular, you think of all types of retail, not just retailers, but restaurants, grocery stores, all those that have customers there. There's basically a dichotomy going on, is you can provide time well saved or you can provide time well spent. And you can be successful at time well saved, but recognize you're competing against Amazon and Walmart and all those big companies that really focus on that and are incredibly efficient. But if you don't give a reason for them to come into your place, if you don't provide time well spent, then it's going to be very difficult to compete against all those other companies out there.
So when you came up with this concept, we were at the start of the experience economy. Now here we are 25 years later. We're reissuing the book, so they're like you said, there's still big interest. But what has changed? What's fundamentally changed over those 25 years? What's different now?
The fundamental change has been the rise of digital technology. The ability to pull out your phone and drop into some other place, virtual place, but some other place than you're in physically is a huge thing. The fact that, but as we talked about from the very beginning of the experience economy, is that the internet is the greatest force of commoditization ever invented. The frictionless marketplace means that customers can instantly compare prices from one vendor to another, and that's going to tend to push them down to the lowest possible price. So that great commoditization then creates the great need to shift into experience staging.
But if you look at the technology, that which people spend the most time, search engines, social media, very fragile proposition. That could change in an instant. People stop going to Facebook, it's over. If people stop tweeting, it's over. I mean, they'll become MySpace. They might be successful today, but that doesn't guarantee success in the future. Also, gaming is big when you get into there's even esports tournaments today. But at the same time, there's an increasing amount of invention of how people spend time in a physical place. I mean, rooms is a good example. Started with escape rooms, now there's rage rooms and assault rooms and mindfulness rooms. So it's very easy to create new genres of experience, new ways in which people spend time. There's an invention of new sports, often mashups. There's now soccer golf. I think there's like 27 soccer golf courses in the U.S. today. There'll be more tomorrow. So people are inventing new ways to spend time, new sports. It really, I think, on the whole, it's just we can't keep up with the proliferation of experiences. It's just now everywhere. It used to be we were looking for examples to cite to illustrate some of the imperatives we outlined, and I've just given up. I mean, at every turn, there's a new experience of some kind.
So one of the key things is companies need to innovate in experiences. And then when they create those innovations, then of course where the rubber meets the road is with that frontline interaction with guests and workers, whether that's in a type of room and other genres of experiences.
And yet we read today continually about how, depending on where you look, half to three-fourths of workers are disengaged. Yep. They're not even, they don't like their job, they don't want to be there. How can experiences speak to that as well?
Well, it's sort of axiomatic. If you want a great experience for your customers, you got to create a great experience for your employees. You have to get them to want to work for you. You have to get them to understand what you're trying to accomplish. You have to get them to ideally be intrinsically motivated to create that great experience for the guests that are in front of them. And that's a key thing. It's not just about your customers. It has to be about your employees and the experience that you create for them and giving them the wherewithal it takes to create that great experience for your customers.
Look, it's not fair to anybody, any worker, to say, go be engaging, go create a great experience, be memorable, when in fact the work is monotonous, routine, boring.
Because of your processes and your systems.
No wonder they don't like the job, because the things they're being asked to do have not been enriched and been more meaningful to them. And I think some simple techniques should basically let people have a greater connection to their work and to the customers. And they're just simple techniques. Don't just tell, here's what we do on the job, here's what we do. Give some people some license to do what they do differently, right? Bring themselves into the performance, right? The job will be more enriching. Part of this is just the old mindset of mass production. We're doing one standard thing the same way all the time for all people. Well, who wants to be a machine like that? No one. I wouldn't want to do that. So I think experiences create an opportunity to invent new genres of work, new ways in which people interact in different kinds of places, and I think that has the possibility of changing people's opinions. But bear in mind, those non-engaging jobs are going to go away on their own. Those are the jobs that are going to be automated
Right.
Very quickly, because if people aren't satisfied with the work they're doing, you're going to encourage high employee turnover. It's going to be constantly that which has to replace. In some sense, the only work that's going to remain is that with people who, in fact, the human element is what differentiates the work. But you need the tools to make that happen.
So earlier you talked about someone who says there's an experience, but there isn't really. And in some cases, that's maybe marketing gone wrong. In other cases, you have marketing who understand, good marketing is understanding customer needs, and they're identifying that the experience needs to be better. So what is the role of marketing in an experience economy?
Well, I think it's a fair question. There's probably you've outlined two different ways to think about marketing. We probably tend to emphasize the
Right.
latter, picking on marketing, but there is, in fact, the marketing is in tune with what's happening in culture, in the marketplace, with competition, with customer needs, and they recognize that operations is not up to what they'd like to promote. No greater harm is done in marketing to make a promise of what your experience is in your marketing campaigns, and then it's actually not fulfilled when you actually experience the offering. So I think there's one avenue in which marketing says, look, we need to operationalize this. Or as Robert Stevens, the Geek Squad, used to say, everything I do needs to be demand creation. Because he had no marketing budget. Therefore, how I did things has to be so engaging, people want to do it time and time again. So I think that
my favorite Robert Stevens line is always, advertising is the tax you pay for being unremarkable.
Yeah, not being distinctive. So I think sometimes marketing can lead this, but sometimes marketing is the problem, right? Peter Drucker once said the purpose of marketing is to make selling superfluous, to which we add, well, the purpose of experiences is to make marketing superfluous. If you have such an engaging experience, you, in some sense, won't have to market. The experience is the marketing. And so there's a case where I think that over time, you should be able to create demand because the actual encounter with you plants the seeds for doing more business with you, and to some sense, should be able to wean yourself off of traditional marketing. Some of that's happening naturally. Marketing is becoming less flat, less two-dimensional, and becoming more experiential with different kinds of events and so forth. But some of the markets, I will be honest with you, I think they're retrenching into data, big data analysis, and their information about a customer is not the same as information from a customer for that same customer. I mean, Joe said a long time ago, anything that can be digitized can be customized. And that's sort of lacking out there. We're still using data in some senses to figure out better targets, better averages, when in fact the ultimate disruptive power of the technology is to be able to customize things for the unique preferences of unique customers.
Right, if you look at advertising in particular, advertising just doesn't work as well in today's media fragmented world. It's hard to capture people's attention with advertising. But if you create an experience, right, in your place that people want to have, that gets them to give their attention to you, get them to spend their time with you, view that as time well spent, well, again, they're going to spend their money with you. They're going to buy your offering as a result. And that's the greatest demand generator that you can have, is an engaging experience.
We have a mutual friend who likes to say, I wish I could check into the hotel ad. The ad looked great, but then I actually arrived. And that's the proof. When you actually encounter the offering, actually encounter the workers, that's the whole thing. And in fact, this is why people increasingly have the opportunity to get information from people who have actually been there before.
Right.
Right. If you think about just Airbnb versus hotels got a nice website, nice glossy things, but Airbnb, you can actually read what people actually think about the place. Right. They can be reading articles about how to make your Airbnb better. There's a whole conversation about how to offer a better experience to people that's much more viral and much more nuanced and much more granular than I wonder if this place is everything it says it's going to be. So the experience is what you have to be proven through actual practice, and marketing can be involved in that. They can drive that. But they can at times also be a barrier to it if they're still clinging on to their old mass marketing ways.
So we're 25 years in. What do you think we'll be talking about 20 years from now?
Besides my funeral arrangements? Seriously. What do you think, Joe?
Well, I think that we will continue to innovate in experiences. There'll be new genres of experience that we can't imagine today. I think a lot of them, not solely, but you have a lot of experiences that really fuse the real and the virtual, that bring technology in to create a great experience in physical places. And if you're really asking, I think we'll see more and more of the next level beyond the experience economy. We talk about going from commodities to goods to services to experiences. Well, there's one more level up there, and that's life-changing experiences that change us in some way that we call transformation. Right? So transformation is you're helping customers achieve their aspiration to become who they want to become. That's all based off the experiences, because we only ever change through the experiences that we have. And if you want to compete at that level, well, you better get into experiences today.
My concern is more structural. I think we have younger generations that are increasingly skeptical of capitalism. And in fact, if capitalists, if innovators don't move to experiences, then in fact, you think people are disillusioned with work now? It'll even get worse. If the only place they have to spend time is with their screen, and they don't have a richer set of alternatives for how to spend their time, we're only going to remain prosperous if we have experiential innovation. Just like the agrarian economy has been automated and fewer people extract commodities, just like we automated the manufacturing industrial economy and we automated the service economy, we must need shift to experiences just to remain prosperous and advanced nation. So my concern is more long-term and structural with the very fabric of economies. And I think it's a business book, it's business principles, it's a business training series, but ultimately it translates into what kind of world that we live in.
Like you said, it's a big idea, but it flows down to each individual person. Yeah, great.
I mean, ultimately, we all have to ask ourselves, how do we spend our time? Right? I mean, we all have life, 24 hours, you only 24 hours a day, but look at how people are increasingly spending their time. Another favorite Peter Drucker quote, I don't know where this one's quite from, but it's attributed to him that culture eats strategy for breakfast. Right? To understand what's happening in the world ultimately informs the organization that you have, and people increasingly care about how they spend their time, and they're spending their time differently, and they're not going to spend it with places that are not engaging.
And that includes employee time. Right. They're not going to work for companies that aren't engaging, that enrich their lives, that provide value to who they are and what they want to become.
I mean, it's a little twist on things to talk about 20 years out. I think the real evidence of getting experiences, because we're saying even this whole training series that start with the people and the human performance, but the service economy paradigm of all 40 hours paid for an hour employee is on stage has to end. An actor prepares. There needs to be off-stage time on the clock, preparing for when you go out and interact with customers. And until that one happens, I mean, you have to ultimately be hiring more people. I mean, the Geek Squad, since we've met Robert Stevens with 12 special agents, now it's 20,000. At the same time, other people have been getting rid of workers. I mean, there's nothing more valuable than the capabilities of a human being. Right. And enterprises that are constantly adding people to their enterprise are adding value in the world. But it's goods and service companies that are looking to cut people. But it's experience-based businesses that are looking to find ways to have people contribute in a positive way to the value they're creating in the world. You have to invest in your people.
Yeah, and that enlightened employers are encouraging their employees to train on the clock.
That's right. And recognize that investment has a return. Right, and you don't do it begrudgingly, right? You do it because you know it's a necessary, and not just necessary. It's just a good thing to do, to invest in other human beings. And as we said at the very start of this conversation, frankly, of all the things you can invest in, it's pretty low cost.
Right. Yeah. Right. You have to help your employee. You have to do training. You have to help them prepare. You have to help them rehearse, and then they can perform on your business stage.
Great. Well, I think that's a good place to end. Joe, Jim?
Pleasure. Thanks.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Jim? Later.